history of politics, it's a question of influence.
Allows the European Commission to impose mandatory risk assessments and mitigation measures on social media.
The Belgian system is just a system you can say whatever you want, but after that you can be responsible. It was too big to fail to fight against the discovery of the truth.
The first panel is about the free speech in Europe, challenges and opportunities. So let me ask all of you, as first things, what is the free speech for you? One of the biggest challenges, this year, I think, basically all of you, we have 2 Belgians and 1 French and an Italian. So all of our countries went to election, and we have faced a lot of problems with disinformation, AI. So what is free speech for you? That's the first question. I would like Georges-Louis to start. Yeah. This means you need to...
Yeah, it's better like this. So thank you very much for the invitation and this organization. Disinformation is the free speech also. As a liberal, I consider that it's not a question that there is a regulation like European Commission to say, okay, is the truth or is not the truth? Because you don't know the truth, I don't know. I have an opinion and I explain. You have an opinion, you explain, and after that, the people choose. And they choose with the education. I think the key of the freedom of speech is a question of education. But it is important when we talk about freedom of speech to have a distinction between illegal position and a clear illegal position, for example, anti-Semitism, and for the rest, just a question of opinion. And I was shocked by the letter of the Commissioner Breton to Elon Musk, because it's just a question of freedom of speech. You don't like this speech, you don't like this person, you don't want that he wins election, but it's not the good way to create new forbidden, some interdiction. The only way is to have a debate and to exchange some opinion with some key words, a good explanation, and after that, the citizens choose a position. And I think that we talk about that just after. It is the most important problem in the Digital Act here by the European Commission, is a question to create a responsibility on the private actor to say you have to disclaim some information. But what is the position and what is the right for the European Commission to say is the truth, is not the truth? And this question is much more complicated with a private actor. Twitter, Facebook, okay, what is the legitimacy to say you can say that or you cannot say that? And I think is the biggest problem of this regulation from the European Commission.
Thank you very much. We will come back to this. Pieter, want to go next?
Sure. What is freedom of speech? I think you should be allowed to say anything you want, but of course there are certain limits. I think a clear limit is incitement to violence. We cannot allow that, but we have to be honest, there are also unclear limits. To what extent can you accuse people of having committed crimes? That's not always easy, we have to admit. But the courts have a great expertise in this. They judge according to certain patterns, and itself that is a good thing. Of course, challenges now with digital freedom of speech. Back in the days, people would say all kinds of things in a semi-private environments, in cafes, etc. And then, this would not cause a problem. Now you have WhatsApp groups, Telegram groups, you have Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, whatnot. But even there, I think we just need to trust the old methods. We need to say, look, there are clear borders. Incitement to violence will always be prosecuted, and there we have a big problem. Incitement to violence is not always prosecuted. For example, we had the protest here, supposedly, in favor of the plight of the people in Gaza. There have been a lot of cases of not even anti-Semitism, that's one thing, but direct incitement to violence that have not been prosecuted. So I think our authorities, the priority should be to start there. Even if you think we should also go after hate speech and all these other things, the priority should first be, that's one thing we should all agree, and that's not happening in Belgium today, and I think in most European countries. In our Belgian constitution, we have very strong protection of freedom of speech. For example, one guarantee was that if you had we call it drukpersmisdrijf, a crime related to the media, it used to be the case that this had to be tried by a jury to serve as a guarantee against abuse by the authorities. This has already been, this protection has been weakened, but over the time, I remember the outgoing government, there were some people arguing that we should make it easier to tackle hate speech. Now, a lot of unpleasant things are being said and published, that is the case. But of course, hate is such an arbitrary category that, it's easy to predict that this will be abused, that this will be not applied unevenly. So I think if you believe in free speech, you have to allow certain far-right voices, far-left voices, even Islamists, I would say. In Belgium, we jailed the leader of Sharia for Belgium. Did he directly incite violence? The judge, I think, eventually decided so, but it was by no means clear. Again, I think we need to prioritize the real direct incitement to violence. We also had the case of Dries van Langenhove in Belgium, who was the manager of a Discord group where all kinds of racist, unpleasant jokes were being made. Now, he did not publish these things himself. He was only sort of the coordinator on this of this group. Now, you could say that's very unpleasant and immoral. Fine. The question is, should the state go after this? In this case, this person was condemned to 1 year of prison. He's still appealing, but he also lost his rights to run for election for 10 years. I think you have to dare to question these developments. There's lots of gray zones. We have to admit it's not always easy, but certainly at the moment the priorities are absolutely wrong. Incitement to violence is often not prosecuted, while all kinds of very questionable provisions of the law that allow the authorities to go after people are being enthusiastically prosecuted in a very arbitrary and uneven way. So that's the case today.
Right, thank you very much, Pieter. Jean-Baptiste? Yeah, just to add, you come from a country where, on the opposite of Belgium, where, let's say, the democratic or the centrist movement still won. MR is one of them, and the Dutch party NVA, which is right, but it's not that extreme right, also became the first in the Dutch part of Belgium. Your country faced a very huge spike of the alt-right. So, and my question, what is free speech and where the information lies, I think it applies quite well on the French case. So how much did information play a role in the rise of the far right in France?
I think the far rights strive on the fact that there are no fact-checking, they have no reliable sources on what they uphold or what their political position is. But I think we should not be naive, because now it's the time of informational warfare. And we are, and people are being paid to influence public opinion. There are being algorithms being used to influence public opinion in order to take one or another decision. There was a case now in the US that 2,800 influencers were paid by a screen company from Russia to promote conservative talking points and to promote divisiveness, Republican talking points. They were not labeled as Republican talking points, but those were conservative talking points. So it happened over there, and we had Cambridge Analytica in the time of Brexit that actually were used in favor of one political opinion against the other. So today about France, we have no evidence whatsoever that Marine Le Pen is directly benefiting from an influence campaign to favor her position. I guess we also have to look about all the landscape, the political landscape of France, to see that maybe the opposition don't manage to tackle the issues that care. But what we have is a concentration of media ownership that oriented or creates tendencies that roam around more specific issue rather than the others. And so migration is a relevant concern for the European public and for French public as well. But how much migration is an inflated debate when we look at asylum numbers and legal immigration numbers, and so compare those with the concern that it is for citizens. And I guess that on that we could question not only maybe influence campaign, because using migrants is not something new for Russia. They have been doing that literally at the border of Poland, sending actual people all over. So if they can send actual people across the border, don't you think they can raise this issue further in the media, in the politics? And so this kind of issue can be, yes, effectively we have the tool, they have the tool to artificially inflate those concerns and those questions. So I think we should not be naive about this freedom of speech and how much it's hurting our actual democracy and our actual freedoms that we benefit here in Europe.
That was a very interesting point. I would like to go back to what Georges-Louis and also Pieter touched a little bit, which is the role of platform in all of this, including disinformation. I'll make an example. If I'm a publisher and the director, or maybe I'm the director of Basel Report, so you decide to publish an op-ed which defamate Georges-Louis, he will take you to court, and you as a publisher needs to pay a fine and be responsible for this. At least this is how it works in Italy and in France as well. I'm not sure about Belgium, but
a little bit different in Belgium.
If the author is known, he's responsible.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not how it works in Italy. Well, it's an interesting way of working in Belgium, I guess. But in general, you will be basically, as the director, you sign off for that. The question that I want to ask the two of you is, who is signing off on the platform? Because they basically publish information. I mean, X, Twitter, call it as you want, is the most downloaded news platform in all South America. It's the fourth one in United States. In Europe I was checking before on the Apple Store, in my Apple Store, which is Italian, is ranking third. So who is signing off? Who is signing off in publishing this news? Where is the moderation? You know, when you have a newspaper and you have a publisher first, you have a director. If a director publish a lot of things, the publisher can say, okay, no, I'll change the director. But when it comes to a platform, where is the role of the platform? Or do you believe that there are two different sectors? So the media sector and the platform sector are completely different. And in this case, how we are going to regulate if we are regulating at all the platform sector? And Jean-Baptiste, you can chip in as well if you want.
Yeah, but you know, the history of politics it's a question of influence. It's not new. I feel that we discover politics. We want to influence the people with some information. Yeah, it's just the history. You know, the case of Dreyfus, for example. A lot of people use a lot of false information to condemn this man. The difference, the biggest difference now, is just a question of efficiency. Social networks are more efficient than just printing some paper to give to the people. It is the only one difference. But for the rest, there is nothing new. And there is another, a second point, the second difference is a question of the direct. It's a direct information. You have to manage in direct and real time, all the time. It is the reason why we have a lot of debate about this question now, but it is the point that explains that it's so complicated to create a regulation. Because if you decide if my speech is a good one, because you feel that this information are the good one, or is not the case, it's not a question of freedom of speech. It's not possible in democracy. So the responsibility of the platform, for me, are too strong now. The information from the Commission and the regulation, for me, is too strong. And the risk is that there is an over-delating, because we don't take any risk. It's the case, for example, with the banks. There is a lot of regulation for solvency, for example, or the regulation to find the fund, if the fund from some countries, and the consequences of that is some companies is banned for bank for the moment. For example, football club. In Belgium, if you are a football club, it's not possible to have a bank. You have to go to Turkey, for example. Because the banks say, okay, there is a lot of regulation, I'm responsible, so the result is that I take no risk at all. And if you create the same mentality, the same point of view in a question of freedom of speech, you realize the risk. It's just the opposite of the democracy. For example, the question of vaccine. We talk about COVID, and the question of vaccine create a lot of debate. There is some science evidence, but in this moment we are not totally sure, because there is no studies, there is no, you need to study year after year to have evidence. So in that case, a platform can cancel your comment, can cancel your point of view. I think it's too dangerous in my point of view. It is the reason why I think the Belgian system is a good one. The Belgian system is just a system you can say whatever you want, but after that you can be responsible. And the question is not to delay it in real time. The question is to say, if you say something is totally wrong, it just false, you can be prosecuted after, and you can be condemned for this opinion, for this speech. And it is the biggest problem for the moment. It is the question that there is no responsibility after. But it's possible to create some new law in different countries, to create new procedure, and light procedure. Because in Belgium, for example, you have to organize a jury. It's very heavy. And it is the goal. It is the goal to keep the freedom of speech. And in Belgium, we say, for prosecute someone for an opinion, it is an obligation that this opinion, this false information are very, very dangerous for the society. It is the reason why the procedure is very heavy, is very complicated. But in the social networks, it's too heavy. So it is important to think about new procedure, more quicker procedure, and lighter procedure to have a real responsibility for your opinion, for your speech during a debate on social networks. But just deleting in real time is for me too dangerous. Because who can delete? Who can decide if you can write or say this or not? It's too dangerous. It's just a question for the justice and not for a private sector or for an employee from X or Facebook.
Peter, would you mind if Jean-Baptiste looks very not in the same page we reply to this?
No, I don't think so, because today it's the private platforms that are actually doing it. And when they decided to ban Trump from Twitter, I mean, it was Jacques Dorsey's decision. It was their decision to ban the guy and to say, okay, you are violating our terms and conditions, even though nobody reads it, but you are violating our terms. We cannot post nudity on Instagram, or some Courbet's painting were forbidden, also were not put up on Instagram because it was violating their terms and policies. Yes, it's debatable. Do they have the right? So it's to consider either those guys have a public necessity, or is giving a public benefit, or if it's just a private company that is actually free to do whatever you want. And if you don't want to listen to Donald Trump on Twitter, you go on Truth Social, and then you follow the guy over there. But for me, it's their fundamental freedom to choose and to apply their policies. But on top of that, the issue I guess we have in Europe with those platforms is that they defy us. They defy the rules and regulations that we are implementing. We ask Balanilov, the guy from Telegram, 15 times, I guess, the French justice asked 15 times the guy to give us or to help us do some investigation that on their platform illicit tradings were happening. And the guy just denied the fact. Same thing with Musk in Brazil. We asked the guy, who is your legal representative in Brazil, to prosecute him, because in case there is some infringement of the law. And he says, no, I don't care, I have none. So, I mean, if the states don't step up for applying his own rules, the rules that the people have voted for, I mean, where are we standing?
Yeah. I'm sorry, but it's a little bit different. Because we talk about, disinformation is not something who are banned officially. It is the reason why I talked about anti-Semitism at the beginning. Because there is three categories of speech. There is the speech who are banned by law. It is an evidence. It is easy. It is a question of there is banned by a law, but this law is not universal. For example, in Hungary about LGBT, so you can delete this comment in Hungary, but the rest of Europe say it's not a good law, it's not fair. And there is the third category, it's just the opinion. And an opinion can create a disinformation. An opinion can base about a disinformation. And it is this category who are very difficult and complicated. Because if you manage this category of opinion, at the end of the day, I think there is no democracy. Because you decide. And you talk about a private organization or private platform. I agree on that, but you can be a private company with public regulation. For example, it's not possible to ban me from a plane without any explanation, because there is the rules that I can move everywhere without any limit. It's the same for the platform. This platform is so important now in the politics debate that it is not normal that this platform can say Trump is banned. No, the President of the United States cannot be banned like this without any decision from the justice. And I think we have to go to the base. The base is in a democracy. Just a judge can say if you can do something or not. And just about evidence and the law. But without any interdiction, without law, it's not possible to ban someone or to condemn someone. And for the moment, the private platform can ban someone, can delete some comments without the control of a judge. For me, it's very, very dangerous. Because we talk, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit provocative, but you know, in Belgium also. But I prefer, I'm sorry for this, but I'm a liberal. I prefer a system like Musk, who said there is no regulation at all, than a system where a private company decide if I can put this photo or if I can say something. I'm sorry for this, but I think we don't realize because we are very focused about the question of disinformation. Because we say, with disinformation, extreme right, extreme left, win election. Okay, but we have to explain. We have to go to the people and we have to ask some question. Why do people don't believe us? In Belgium, for example, there is no fatality. In Belgium, we win election. And we beat extreme left. In the Flemish part, NVA beat extreme right. So it's possible to beat them. And they use Facebook. They use this information. But we explain, we go to the people, and we talk about the subject who interests the people. And I think it's the biggest problem of the European Union. But it's a big political debate, and we are so far from the beginning. I think in the Commission, for example, we talk a lot of things, but it's not the subject that my neighbor talked with me. And I think political powership is legitimate if the people can say, okay, these people talk about my problems, they resolve my problems. And I think it's the real debate now to fight against the extreme right and left.
Peter?
Yeah, well, regarding Trump, I mean, there's the Twitter files. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like when Musk acquired Twitter, he basically released a lot of information, shedding light on how things were being done before. And there it appeared, I'm not sure about the specific case of Trump, but that the US authorities have been putting pressure on the social platform. So yes, if you say it's a completely private platform, for me it's also part of freedom of speech that they can decide to shadow ban, to restrict, fine. I'm okay with that. I think it would be a violation of their freedom of speech to intervene into that. Very different when you have the American authorities putting pressure on dominant social platforms for ultimately political gain of those controlling those authorities, because this is really what appeared to be happening with the Twitter files, and I find this deeply problematic. I mean, if you're talking about influence operations from authoritarian adversaries, China, also Russia, that's not new. The Soviet Union was the top in the class of that. The KGB, they had high expertise. For example, when the AIDS virus was breaking out, then they were actively trying to campaign in Western media to try to push stories that it was a US invention or something. And this is of course not good, right? I'm not saying it's good. The question is, how do you stop that? Do we have to find it normal that the European Union can ban RT, which is a state propaganda channel? Sure. But there's many, let's say, nonsensical TV and newspapers I mean, where does it end if we start banning this? Just saying, oh yeah, but this is the channel of a foreign adversary. Yes, but is this sufficient to ban it? I personally don't think so. It would be different again if they would cross the line and actively call for violence, and okay, that's different. But I think we really have to be a lot more careful with all that.
Well, I give you immediately a word. I want to reply on RT in general. I think the reason why they've been banned is not because they are owned by a foreign adversary, but because the campaign that we are doing and some media were streaming in Europe, media that actually were sometimes even in Italy, for example, some small regional channels that don't have money to pay for. Now, I know the landscape of media in all Europe is different. I have no idea about the Belgian one. I can talk about the Italian. We have three big groups, like Mediaset, Berlusconi, and Cairo, and a lot of small local entities. These small local entities were not able to pay for American streaming movies, were producing Russian news or Russian movies where killing Ukrainians were good. So honestly, when it comes to this, I disagree with you, Peter. Sorry, with this one.
I will go back on the comparison that you were making with banks. In 2008, when the financial crisis broke down, there was this expression that we were trying to look at. It was too big to fail. And so I guess we are kind of condemned in the same way with those private platforms for communications. Like, is Twitter too big to fail? Like, should we rely on them that much as a private company, or is it just a failure of free market? That there's not enough concurrence, that there's Thread, there's Instagram or Meta, but the issue is still the overconcentration of media, and that I see in the too big to fail, and Twitter is not giving any public services. It's becoming a platform, but if this one falls down, the next one will come up. Because this is how free market works. And I do believe in free market. So no, I mean, they don't comply with the law. They should be banned. And yes, it's going to hurt businesses for some time, but afterward, because advertising and so on, but Musk is doing very well on its own to bring advertising down. But we should very much think about what is public service or what is very important. And Meta and X too big to fail, but we should protect them or actually comply and go in that direction. The second thing is in France we are having now a TV channel that is getting banned, which is C8, owned by Mr. Bolloré. But why is it banned? Because in audiovisual law, what we have is the obligation for plurality. And these TV channels 25 times have been summoned because they were only favoring the far-right candidates. So they had no left-wing candidates. Mr. Aluna, that you must know very well here as well, already he had some friends in the far left, and then he started not liking them, and then he stopped calling on them on TV. And so we say, okay, once, twice, thrice, always the same candidates. And now, there was a process, a due process that was followed. And at the end, they said, we are going to ban your TV. Not because you are favoring an opinion, which is already a problem, but because you are actually defying once and again the regulator. And this is an issue. It's not necessarily about the position, it's about the position vis-a-vis the regulator.
Honestly, I think our Belgian media should be happy that we do not have a law like in France imposing plurality, because I think many TV programs here, they only feature center-left to left-wing voices, and that's just the also in pure broadcasting, pure reporting. There's a clear center-left bias, which for me is not a crime. Journalists are entitled to their opinions, and they can even have a bias. And I think it would fail if you try to impose balance. But I mean, to answer to your argument, yes, let's assume it's true that Mr. Bolloré has violated this law, but I don't think this law is respecting freedom of speech. I don't think it's good. And again, let's just try to focus on the excesses, calling violence also with RT. Yes, if you can prove that RT has actively been promoting incitement to violence, sure, ban them, shut them down, I agree. But let's be really careful with imposing all kinds of, measuring of content. I was gonna read from the Digital Services Act. This legislation allows the European Commission to impose mandatory risk assessments and mitigation measures on social media, and they go explicitly beyond illegal content. So even legislation that we may not like, okay, you can say fine, it's okay for the European Commission to police it. Maybe I can accept that. But these risk assessments are also aimed to address deceptive content and disinformation. So the European Commission, they cannot not only go after illegal content, but also against what is considered disinformation. And I remember the Ukrainian war started in 2014, and right after, because you had a lot of the Russian disinformation operations, that is true, the European Commission came up with a body, now it's called Disinfo, it had a different name. And I remember one of the first days that they were online, they already had it wrong. They claimed something that was, about the Ukrainian group, that it was influenced by Russia, which appeared to be completely the opposite. It was something like that, a small thing, but it just showed that it's very difficult to get it right also. And if we then appoint bureaucratic institutions to dictate this is the truth, this is not, I think we're bound to go wrong. The COVID crisis has proven that this is so complicated. The same with climate science, is very dependent on all kinds of data sets. There's no shame in saying, look, we don't actually know for sure, with our limited knowledge, this is what the current scientific consensus is, but maybe in 15 years it will be different. So if you go down the route allowing the guys with the guns, the authorities, to dictate this is true, this is false, I would say very dangerous.
Josh, you wanted to?
Yeah, in the same way, I think the truth is a question for religion, but in a democracy or in a science, the truth is dangerous. There is something who are truths and other no. But for the rest, there is a lot of debate, and the opinion can be changed. It's just a question of compromise in a society during one moment. But for example, during a period of history, to say that the world is, it's a globe, was forbidden. It was forbidden. And after the science proved that the earth, the world is a globe. It is a little bit the same here. And it could be very dangerous because private society don't take any risk because the sanctions are very, very high. 6% of the chiffre d'affaires, I don't know in English, 6% is very, very high. And there is a great difference between social networks, platform, and television and radio. Why? Because in your case, it's a question of license. Because there is a number of channels who can be broadcast because there is a technical limit. It's the same for radio, for example. In Belgium, it's the same. With the FM, you can have, I don't know, for example, 50 channels of radio. It's not technical, it's not possible to have more than 50 channels. It is a reason why there is a regulation who decide you can provide or you cannot. But on internet, there is no technical limit. The only limit is just a question of law. It is a great difference. There is a regulatory for radio, for TV, because we have to manage this la bande passante, But It's not the case on internet. So what is the legitimacy to say, I will create a limit of the number of the actors just because I don't like it? And I agree, the public television can be in the left side, but private television cannot be in the right side. So it is also a problem. For example, the public TV in Belgium, 2 months before the election, decide each day to have a subject about the planet, about ecology. 2 months before the election, not about taxation, not about labor, not about security, no, about just the question of ecology. It is okay or not? I can decide it's more in favor in one party, so there is not disinformation, but could be influence the result of the election or not. What is the limit when you talk about that? So it is the reason why I think we have to let the freedom of speech, and after you have to assume your responsibilities by a judge. Just a judge is the key rules of the state, of a democratic state, is that there is no one, despite a judge, can say if you say something or not. And we don't have to forget that, because we're afraid about social networks. And I understand that we're afraid because it is so big and there is so much people who can be influenced in some minutes. And I understand the challenge, but it is not the reason to change the base of the democracy. And just the last example, because we talk about Ukraine and Russia. The question of the explosion of Nord Stream 2. Nord Stream 2 explodes by Russian action or Ukrainian action? There is a real debate. And now the justice in Germany opened an information about Ukrainian protagonists. So, in social network, just at the beginning of the war, you think that someone can write easily that is not the fault of Russia, but is the fault of Ukraine? I don't think so. I don't think so. It is a reason why it's very dangerous. Because when you think that you know the truth, in that case, you fight against the discoverer of the truth.
Yeah, just two points. The first one, I don't know what it is, how it is in Belgium, but in France, in time of election, we have time measurements according to the representativity of the parties. So I'm not saying about measuring and you'll say I'm over controlling everything, but yes, there is a space for representation and according to the thing. And if one subject takes traction, then it will be treated all over. And for that, this freedom in social media is definitely welcome compared to traditional media. And on the other hand, I'm very happy when I see very big companies that are actually larger than states, like Google, being actually taken down when they don't respect the law by EU courts, because their Android platforms were actually biased toward Google Chrome. Or same thing with Ireland, where they managed to actually get their tax money back because they were actually trusting. So it's also good when you see states and the European Union in this case standing up for itself and for its rights and for its laws, and manage to have big companies, a giant company, comply to our rules and regulations.
Just to come to your point on Ireland, that you're saying because you're French and the taxation in France is too high for anything else, so it's biased a bit, let's be honest. But apart from jokes, that was a very interesting debate. We actually have another 5 minutes, so I want to just do a closing remark and be a bit provocative here. I would love to explore a part on sabotaging the Nord Stream 2, but we don't have time. Just want to say that in Italy we had a lot of terrorist attacks in the past, but still we need to discover the truth. And I think the Nord Stream 2 will be one of these, but I don't want to enter in this because it will be too long. But we discussed a lot about platform, but there is something that all of these platforms have in common, which is they are all American. We don't have any European platform. Now, yesterday, Mario Draghi, former Italian Prime Minister, former ECB chairman, presented his competitiveness report saying that some type of regulation, like AI Act or GDPR, are great type of regulation, mastermind regulation, but they could create more red tape. Now, I don't believe that neither GDPR, neither AI Act have been the reason why, especially the AI Act, because it's new, we don't have a European champion. So my question, to be provocative, is would we have the same debate on the danger of the platform taking down comments or being pushed by government if these were French, Belgian or Italian, if Facebook was French, Belgian or Italian?
Yeah, I think it's an Italian guy who said United States create, China copy, and Europe creates some regulation. I think it's totally the case now. We are the first continent with a regulation about artificial intelligence, for example, but we don't have any champion on this category. We spend 4 times less money than China or United States about research on artificial intelligence. I think I said everything. It is the biggest problem. I'm a lawyer, so for me the law is very important, but the law doesn't create money. I think it's important when the Commission decides to create a new legislation. But in the same time, when you create new legislation, you have to create a new program for investment, for research, for developing some industries. And I think it's the biggest challenge of the European Union for the moment, is to create new industries. Because in this way, without industry, without military aspect, without autonomy about energy, I think in 50 years, perhaps, European Union will be the 3rd, perhaps the 4th power ship continent into the world. And I don't want that, because I believe in the European project and I believe on our values. But Europe can be not just values. Values without power ship is nothing. And I think is the biggest mistake of our politicians during this period, because we talk a lot about our values and we create new law and okay, super, but the other continent don't care about that, because if we are not happy, we don't have any military forces. We need industry from China, for example, in the electronics aspect. And we need energy from everywhere. So I think, for me, is the biggest challenge for the next Commission is to create new champion in this category, in new technology. I think for social networks or platform is too late, because now for a new actor, you need to invest so much to arrive at the level of Facebook, Meta now, or X. Then okay, you lose your shirt before you arrive at this level. But there is a lot of subjects, for example, artificial intelligence. But one point, and finish with that. But for example, Meta refused to implement the solution of artificial intelligence in Europe. Because the legislation is too difficult. It is the best example. Because it's explained why there is no European company who creates something. Because the legislation is too hard. And I think it is better to let the innovation, and after this innovation, you create a legislation to have regulation, to manage this innovation for the best in the society. But in Europe, we do totally the opposite. We create a legislation, and after that, we say, you can create something new. But what? There is just the regulation, there is so much rule, so I need to create that, the solution into the law, and not the opposite. And the example of United States is the best example. Because in Europe, we see the United States like the country with a lot of freedom. It's not the case. There is a lot of freedom to create. But after the innovation, the state decides the future of your company. Rothschild is the best example, but now it's the same for Google or the other company. If you are too big, one time the regulations say, that's finished. You have to go in this way or this way. But during this period, the company created a lot of knowledge, a lot of rich, a lot of money. And I think we have to inspire this way of organization, and we have to change our state of mind, because all the innovation in Europe now is a danger. Danger for your health, danger for democracy. We talk about innovation all the time like a danger, and I think we have to change this state of mind.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody has heard of Quairo.
No idea.
So Quairo was an EU attempt to create a competitor for Google. So it was not so extremely successful.
What's the name?
Quairo. If you go on
I think the
Wikipedia.
problem was the name.
Yeah, I guess.
It was another name.
So it didn't really work. And what Draghi now proposes is to have European champions. Well, I'm in favor to the extent that it would mean that European competition policy is a bit more lax for mergers. That's a very good idea, actually. Of course, it's a bad idea to inject fortunes of taxpayers' money into these big companies, but of course, if you want a successful company, you need somebody that risks to lose everything. If it's owned by everybody, the government, it's owned by nobody. So why would you make an effort? So real innovation will come, of course, from the private sector. Now, Draghi, in his report, I think you alluded to it, he also mentioned how excessive EU regulation is ultimately bad for small European competitors of American big tech. Because big tech, they have massive budget, they can comply with all these extra conditions set to operate, but SMEs, they're actually the real victims of this. So I think we should keep that in mind. So just like with energy and climate debate, the solution is to unleash cheap energy, nuclear power, to end all these excessive climate policies in the realm of innovation and development of IT solutions specifically. I think we really need to slash a lot of EU regulations, starting with GDPR, because if you want artificial intelligence, you need one thing: data. So I'm sure GDPR has, to a degree, it's of course not the only reason, constrained AI development in Europe. There's a German Christian Democratic MEP, Axel Voss, he has been saying that for a few years now. So, and it's good, very good to see Draghi also attacking GDPR in his report. I remember this was, a complete taboo in Brussels. They were all very happy that Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, was praising the EU for its GDPR regulation. They were so proud, the best data regulation in the world, but it has backfired. It's confusing, it's unclear, it's constraining for innovation. But of course also the member states, I think what France has done with Durov, I mean, if you're an American, VC investor, and you're thinking to invest in a big French AI startup, because France has the most AI startups of Europe, I mean, these people don't follow the detail. Even if maybe Durov did not comply with a number of requests, I mean, to lock him up like that, that's not a good promotion for investing in the European tech scene. Especially, I was reading the accusations against Durov, and one of it was that his company did not share their code for encryption. So many encryption specialists, they were deeply surprised that France has this regulation. This goes against the heart of encryption, of course, and encryption is also very important for securing all this, all these new products. So I think, well, for start, not coming up with new regulations is a good start, but also Europe really need to identify a number of regulations like the AI Act, like GDPR, that they simply need to scrap, I think. Also as a signal to the world, Europe is open for business again, and we have learned from our mistakes.
Jean-Baptiste, your thoughts?
To go back to your questions about the American champions, the US Supreme Court have given a decision which is Citizen United, the fact that money is free speech in the US. And so that is a big concern that I may have with the concentration of media companies in Europe and the fact that they are oriented or they are influencing the debate because they have the big money, so they can buy TV channels, so they can buy newspaper. We saw that with Kletinsky, we saw that with plenty of people looking at the media and saying, okay, this is going to help me for my business, this is going to help me to strive. And we know that information, and especially like old school newspaper prints, and even TV is not a reliable model. It's not something that is going to self-sustain, because we subsidize a lot of newspapers, because we subsidize information. So I guess at the end, before going on specifically platforms or specifically TV channels, we should think about what role information plays, and should it be mercantilized? Should it be a product? Should it be a commodity? And so, is the state has to subvention? He has to give subsidies to companies, or is it like actually open to free market with no constraint and with all the consequences that it may have? On one hand for foreign influence, but on the other hand also for the health of the economy. So I guess is information a commodity is definitely a question that we should ask ourselves as a European Union thinkers, political parties and leaders.
Let me ask you, and this is the last question after we open to the Q&A. What do you think? Should be a commodity? Because I make an example. In Italy, yes, we subsidize many newspapers, but this newspaper goes from the Communist Party Unità newspaper to the Verità, which is the exact opposite, and everything that is written there is most of the time wrong and racist and anti-Semitic and everything else you can imagine. But we subsidize everything. So, but the reason is because neither L'Unità, neither La Verità will survive without this. Incredible, actually. The newspapers that are not getting subsidies are actually owned by some small businesses, not from big businesses. Corriere della Sera in Italy is getting public money, while if Foglio, which is a very small newspaper that is read just in Rome, basically, is actually free of subsidies. So my question comes to you is like, where it stops the subsidies, or where should we stop or when should we stop to subsidize? And well, it's open to everyone, but as you pointed this out, I'm curious to hear your reply on this.
I guess it's just a question of business model and ownership. In France, last week we had a company, Duralex, which creates caps and glasses, and who was just bankrupted and got bought back by their employees in order to stand up. So I think that we also, in that information is the condition to free market. It's Adam Smith's just first theory. So if you don't have access to information, you don't have free market. So it's how relevant it is. So we should more likely reconsider the ownership of platforms and who holds it and how it's leaded, rather than necessarily regulation and so on.
I don't know if you guys want to reply to this.
That's subsidiation.
Yeah.
I don't like subsidies. Yeah, I think it's better than the states reduce taxation. I don't give any subsidiation, but okay, I know that I think that the question is just the problem of the business model for information in this century with internet. So we give some money to the newspaper because now the newspaper is not possible to win money with newspaper, with the paper form. But on internet, the situation is worse than in the paper form. So we are between two worlds. The end of the paper, and I think that the end arrive, not for today necessarily, because a media, in the history, there is no media who disappear for another one. Just media plus another one, plus another one, plus another one. Just the question of the higher of consumption is different. So I think that the public states have to make a reflection about the business model on internet for the information. Because at the end of the day, the big risk is that there is just the platform to give information, so without journalists, just the people to another people, because the business model now for the media is not possible. It is a reason why in France, for example, there is a lot of rich guy who buy this media. Because after they earn so much money, they want to have influence on the society, because it's very interesting to be a CEO, the owner of a media company, because you have an influence. All the politicians come to you, and you can give some message. Is the case of Bolloré, for example. Bolloré, when he buy some media, is not an industrial question or an economical question. Just a political question. He wants to give some message, conservative message in that case. So it is a reason why we have to make a real reflection about these subsidies. In Belgium now, the regulations are different in the north and in the south. But in the south of the country, for receive subsidies, you have to respect some regulation. But it is the same than for the rest. It's just a judge who can take a decision about you. A judge can say, okay, I condemn you for anti-Semitism, for example, or because the information are false in your newspaper. And after a legal condemnation, it's possible to reduce subsidies or to ban the subsidies. But it's just a little part of the real debate. The real debate is the future of media in this competition, because there is the question of internet, question of social network, the question of live is always on live for the moment. So for a lot of media, the question of the business model is, there is no reply, there is no answer about the question of the business model, and I think it's the new debate. And this debate, in my opinion, is more important because, and I finish with that, the problem for the media now, that they reduce a lot the spending. So they reduce the number of journalists, and they take, young journalists just to write one article, and we pay by article, okay? The consequences of that is that the journalists don't check they don't check the information. They take my tweet, for example. I write a tweet, 10 minutes after, I'm sure that there is an article. Because it costs nothing. I can write this article, and I check a little bit some reaction, and I put on top news on website. It's very quick. The people like this kind of information, so you can earn money because the people click. But there is just the zero level of information. It's not the job of a journalist to report what is the atmosphere on X. It's not the job of a journalist. In the same time, if the same journalist have to check one of my declaration, it takes 1 day, 2 days, 1 week. It costs so much. And after, how many people who want to read this? And I think it's the biggest problem for our democracy now. And I finish with my first point. It's just a question of education. Education. And I think we have to have a reflection about school, about the quality of the debate in the public channel also. But the question of education is the key word for me, is the key debate for this challenge.
Well, yeah, coming back to your example, it's of course unfair. It's a distortion of freedom of speech that Il Foglio gets no taxpayers' money and La Repubblica gets taxpayers' money. And for me, the solution is to give no media taxpayers' money. Also in Belgium, we have this problem that the media are indirectly subsidized through the postal free delivery by the state post company of certain magazine newspapers. This has been reduced a bit, thankfully, but many Belgian media, I'm sure that played a role, which enabled them to buy up Dutch media. So somehow the European Commission did never take any action against this. Yeah, I agree also with education. If you have, we see all across Europe that the level of education goes down, and of course then your market for more highbrow journalism also reduces. On the other hand, maybe we should not be too pessimistic. If you look at, for example, podcasts that are very popular, like Joe Rogan, it's like I think 3 hours, so it's quite let's say demanding. It's not easy content, and that also works. So yeah, I think we just have to trust that ultimately people will go for content, and that does not mean that once in a while they want to consume a low quality product, a bit of pulp as well. But ultimately, I would trust the market.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think we have time for 2 questions from the public. It's very thin. Otherwise, I think we can close it here. We are already running out of time, so we need to prepare for the second panel. So if there are no questions, we will meet here at 4 o'clock again for the second panel. Thank you very much, Pieter, Georges-Louis, and Jean-Baptiste. French is terrible.
No luck for you today.
No luck for
Jean-Luc, Georges-Louis.
Yes, complicated. So thank you very much for being our speakers today.
Thank you.